come explore a mystical realm of vibrant colors, exotic aromas, and ancient traditions. Experience a sacred space where the world's most exotic riches can be had for the right price. Enter the Great Bazaars of the Middle East. It was in these ancient marketplaces that global trade first flourished. Despite their antiquated presence in a rapidly changing world, the bazaars remain great centers of spiritual, cultural, and material wealth, vanishing wonders to behold. Join us as we take you on the journey of a lifetime across the medieval rooftops of Fez, through the cobbled lanes and blind alleys of Cairo, past the dazzling street performers of Marrakesh, over the jutting minarets and domed mosques of Istanbul, and into the heart of ancient Islam. Behold, the Great Bazaars. Over the centuries, explorers, adventurers, and writers alike have described the central markets of the Middle East as exotic realms, straight out of the tales of 1001 Nights. Their senses were overwhelmed by powerfully alluring aromas, a sea of colors, and the beckoning calls of shopkeepers, street hawkers, and beggars. As one 19th century explorer observed,
"The bazaars swarm with people, men and women, donkeys, camels, and oxen, bearing heavy loads, are inextricably mingled, every one in the way of others, with no rule of turning out to the right or the left, all shouting, screaming, pulling, and whacking the beasts, with most ludicrous appeals to the prophet." Perry Fogg, 1875.
Today, these sensual attractions still fascinate the visitor. To fully understand the hidden world of the bazaar and unlock its many secrets, one must realize the profound cultural role these central market districts have been playing since the emergence of Islamic society. The story of the Great Bazaars really begins over 1400 years ago, when the new religion of Islam swept across the Arabian Peninsula. Quickly conquering a major part of the known world, the Arabs raised international trade to a new and unprecedented level of intensity. Over the course of only 2 generations, Islamic armies conquered Jerusalem, Damascus, Mesopotamia, Persia, and Central Asia all the way to India, and in the other direction, Egypt, North Africa, and Spain. Thanks to the removal of state frontiers, the lowering of trade barriers, the widespread adoption of the Arabic language, and the surge in pilgrimages to Mecca, a new importance was bestowed onto the ancient trade centers of pre-Islamic times, bringing into the limelight the newly established bazaars. The explosion in trade and commercial activity across the Arab world would have been impossible were it not for the introduction of a rather comical-looking creature, the camel. Known by the Arabs as the ship of the desert, the camel was heralded as God's greatest gift to mankind. No other animal was able to survive for long in this harsh and unforgiving environment. In the world's largest desert, the Sahara, the hardships of travel were always a matter of life and death. Caravans had many dangers awaiting them as they set forth into this hostile domain. Scorching heat, with temperatures sometimes exceeding 120 degrees. Blinding sandstorms, and deadly bandits who attacked the richly laden caravans, or even worse, poisoned the wells to kill both man and beast. For nothing was as precious as a desert well or oasis. Scattered sparsely across the barren expanses of the Sahara, these were the vital rest stops where life-giving water flowed, and caravans paused to gather their strength. After a brief stay at the oasis, the caravan would reluctantly venture back into the vastness of the Sahara, moving on in their endless journey. One British explorer who survived the treacherous trek across the Sahara once wrote,
When I first entered the sands, I was bewildered by the utter unfamiliarity of my surroundings, and frightened by the feeling that I had only to be separated from my companions to be completely lost in the maze of dunes. Each interminable empty day ended at sunset and started again at dawn. Hour after hour, my camel shuffled forward, moving, it seemed, always up a slight incline towards an indeterminable horizon. And nowhere in all that glaring emptiness of gravel plain and colorless sky was there anything upon which my eyes could focus. Wilfred Thesiger, explorer.
While the network of long-distance trading routes steadily expanded, so too did the age-old Islamic commercial centers and their great bazaars. From the 15th to 16th centuries, during the height of the mighty Ottoman Empire, the already sizable bazaars grew into enormous complexes, stretching over many acres and containing hundreds of shops. Fabulous wealth flowed from the region long before the discovery of the black gold known as oil. For 2,500 years, Istanbul has been a major crossroads of history, the meeting place of East and West, a glorious international city bridging the continents of Asia and Europe. Located along the hilly shores of the Bosphorus and the Golden Horn, Istanbul has long been one of the most important trade centers in the world. For over 1,000 years, the city was known as Constantinople, capital of the Byzantine Empire and heir to Rome. In 1453, Constantinople fell to the Ottomans, and the Islamic city of Istanbul was born. Today, Istanbul is a world-class city containing over 12 million people. Even now, the heart and soul of this modern metropolis is still the Great Covered Bazaar, also known as the Kapalı Çarşı. First opened for business in the 15th century, this massive marketplace spans about 100 acres and contains more than 4,000 shops. Fully covered with thick domed roofs, the Kapalı Çarşı offers a semi-climate-controlled shopping environment, shielding customers against the elements and allowing businesses to operate year-round. Each morning at 8:30, the 18 gates of the Grand Bazaar are opened, and another day of business begins. About 500,000 people pass through these gates every day, entering into a maze of alleys and passageways filled with an unlimited variety of sights, sounds, and smells.
I spent 3 hours in threading the almost interminable labyrinths of streets, and had I not known something of London and Paris, I might have imagined that the wealth, rich fabrics, and especially curiosities had been collected from the whole world and placed within this bazaar. Archibald Pollock Black, 1865.
Another 19th century traveler once observed that a single shopping tour in the Kapalı Çarşı would be enough to bankrupt several Rothschild families. The coffers of many a sheik and sultan were badly depleted during the days when bow and arrow makers, opium dealers, and slave traders were still doing business in the bazaar. As in all the bazaars, the Kapalı Çarşı is comprised of several different galleries in which the various shops and stalls are grouped together by the type of merchandise they sell. All of these distinct galleries are designated as separate mini-bazaars, such as the Antique Bazaar, the Copper and Brass Bazaar, and of course, the world-famous Carpet Bazaar. The Kapalı Çarşı has gained a worldwide reputation by offering luxury goods of the highest quality and craftsmanship. And here there is nothing more substantial and exquisite than the Turkish carpet. Tucked away in an exclusive section of the bazaar are some of the finest shops for hand-woven carpets to be found anywhere in the world. Knowledgeable carpet dealers not only help to keep a time-honored tradition alive, they also bless the Turkish economy with the badly needed hard currency they bring in from wealthy European collectors.
Biz çoğunlukla Anadolu'nun uzak köşelerindeki köylerde
We mostly sell traditional hand-loomed carpets that are made in remote villages all over Anatolia. The marketplace for selling Turkish carpets really became pretty competitive over the past few years. Tour guides now rush their groups through the bazaar in just 1 to 2 hours, which gives them no time to visit many of the smaller shops. It takes time just to find the right carpet, and still more time to bargain the merchant down to a fair price. One good thing is that more traditional designs and patterns have become popular again, and the bazaar now offers a nice selection of unique pieces.
Competing with carpets in financial importance, the gold district of the bazaar is a glittering feast for the eyes. Over 100 tons of gold are sold in the Grand Bazaar every year, mostly by the jewelers on the Kalpakçılar Caddesi, the main street of the jewelry bazaar. Gold has long been prized in the Arab world, not only for its beauty, but also as a form of savings. Muslim women traditionally received gold jewelry as a dowry and kept it as an insurance policy in the event of divorce. Now it is primarily appreciated for its decorative value. A short distance from the Grand Bazaar, more of the charm of old Istanbul can still be found in the famous Spice Bazaar, also known as the Egyptian Market. First opened for business in the early 17th century, this vast marketplace once imported most of its spices from Egypt. Today, its stalls still stock a colorful and aromatic selection of spices, from the purest of saffron to the most exotic varieties of pepper, and even some spicy aphrodisiacs of unknown potency. Once a major spice trading hub, the Egyptian Bazaar has seen the bulk of its business lost to large multinational corporations and commodities exchanges, which now dominate the spice trade. Several times a day, the merchants of the bazaar have their tea hand-delivered to them by fast-moving tea couriers. Summoned through an old-fashioned electric buzzer system, these men deliver trays full of hot apple tea in tulip-shaped glasses. As a cooler alternative, juice sellers offer refreshing cherry juice, an especially appealing option on the hottest of days. Traditional water fountains, some with their original antique fixtures still intact, can still be found at some of the larger crossroads of the bazaar. Here the locals gather water for drinking, as well as for the ritual washing of the face, hands, and feet, which must be performed before entering the mosque for daily prayers. Since the beginning of Islam, the followers of Muhammad established public spaces for meeting and worship close to the bazaar. Rarely did these sacred places turn out to be as magnificent as the famous Blue Mosque of Istanbul, with its jutting minarets, billowing domes, and beautifully tiled mosaics. Islam still has an all-pervasive influence on the inhabitants of the Muslim world. The awe-inspiring architecture of Islamic mosques reflects the vast importance placed on religion. In the most majestic of mosques, under the open sky, and in the ritual dance of the whirling dervishes, Allah is praised.
The great prayer wound its way into my sleepy consciousness like a serpent, coil after shining coil of words. The voice of the muezzin sinking from register to register of gravity, until the whole morning seemed dense with its marvelous healing powers, the intimations of a grace undeserved and unexpected. Lawrence Durrell, writer.
It is said that if you haven't seen Cairo, you haven't seen the world. An ancient city, Cairo clings to the mighty Nile River, the vital lifeline of Egypt. Sprawling and densely populated with approximately 14 million people, Cairo stands as the largest metropolis in all of Africa. It is impossible to stand back and view the whole of Cairo, as it reveals itself like a closed flower, one petal at a time. Cairo was at the height of its splendor by the time Europe began crawling out from under the Dark Ages. Located in the heart of medieval Cairo, the Khan el-Khalili Bazaar first opened for business in the 1400s and soon became one of the great stopovers for traders and travelers alike. In the words of one traveler,
"The bazaars of Cairo are only surpassed by those of Damascus and Constantinople in the extent, richness, and variety of the 1,001 articles of Oriental manufacture. The streets are so narrow and crooked that the older part of the city resembles a huge honeycomb. The upper stories project over the one next below, and the front is usually of latticework, which enables the bright-eyed damsels to watch all that passes in the street without being seen themselves." Perry Falk, 1875.
from the beginning, spice has been one of the major commodities of the Cairo Bazaar. Here, the aromatic scent of cinnamon, saffron, and clove fills the air, carried from the spice shops that line the streets. Another specialty of the Khan el-Khalili are the perfume shops. Every shop mixes different essences to create their own new fragrances, designed to seduce the discriminating noses of customers. In the mix of 1,001 aromas, the smell of food is always present in the bazaar. Sold by roadside vendors, these steaming hot sweet potatoes are a popular fast food. On the eastern edge of the bazaar is the 1,000-year-old fortified Gate of Conquest, the Bab al-Futuh. Early each morning, farmers drive their carts through the gate to sell their produce in the onion and garlic market. These pungent roots are staple ingredients in many Arabic dishes. It's hard to imagine that this relaxed marketplace was once the busy site of Cairo's slave bazaar. Cairo's medieval center and the bazaar are host to many exotic professions, several of which are on the verge of extinction. Hassan Raouf and his brother Rida run one of Cairo's last workshops where muski glass is still blown in the old way. Despite cutthroat competition from large industrial glass producers who have flooded the market with their cheap machine-made merchandise, the Raoufs vigorously persevere.
أصله بنشتغل بالإزاز المستعمل تاني.
We recycle glass. We pay local boys to bring us glass they find in the streets or in the dump. The boys sort out the city's garbage and bring us bags full of broken bottles. 7-Up bottles are used for green glass, Pepsi and Coke for clear, and medicine or beer bottles for amber-colored glass. We melt it down in this furnace we built. It gets very hot in here, especially in summer. We work long days, and our clothing gets very sweaty. In the end, our glass is sold everywhere in the bazaar, to the local peoples and tourists also.
Starting with a small lump of molten glass, Hassan begins to shape the glass by swinging it through the air, then by blowing through the hollow tube, careful to keep it constantly turning. Working hard in their traditional factory, the Raoufs may well be the last generation of muski glassblowers. Another age-old trade threatened with extinction is the making of tarbushes, the red felt caps that were once traditionally worn by men throughout the Islamic world. With delicate precision, each cap is steamed for a custom fit. A satisfied customer. In one of the back alleys of the bazaar, one can find foot ironer Mahmoud Hamdi hard at work. He irons for 8 back-breaking hours a day in his tiny shop, guiding the hot 33-pound iron with his right hand while pressing down firmly with his foot. One of the last remaining members of the exotic guild of foot ironers, his son has forsaken his father's ancient ways in favor of a more modern iron. In a practiced move, Mahmoud accurately sprays the clothes with a fine mist of water, blown directly from his mouth.
أشهد أن لا إله الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد
5 times a day, the call to prayer is heard, emanating from hundreds of mosques throughout Cairo.
أشهد أن محمدًا رسول
Embedded close to the bazaar is the incomparable Al-Azhar Mosque, which also houses the world's oldest university.
حي على الصلاة
Regarded by many as the most powerful intellectual center in the Sunni Islamic world, the Al-Azhar continues to have a tremendous influence on the religious, political, and social life of modern-day Egypt.
حي على الفلاح
In the courtyards and quiet rooms of the Al-Azhar Mosque, the people don't just pray and study. They also commune with one another, meditate, and rest. Despite the pervasive influence of Islam, it is an ancient and pre-Islamic concept of time that still prevails within the bazaar. People work, eat, and socialize only when they want to, and not according to some rigid schedule imposed upon them. Perhaps the best place to lose one's sense of time is in the languid atmosphere of the coffee house, the social center in the daily life of Arab men. Every afternoon, the men come to unwind, often over a game of backgammon. Others come seeking solitude, sitting by themselves to meditate over a glass of hot tea. It is here that the leisurely consumption of coffee and tobacco is regarded as an essential part of everyday living. Centuries ago, coffee and tobacco were considered to be spiritually harmful, and anyone found drinking or smoking these forbidden substances was punished, or even put to death. In Cairo's bazaar, coffee houses such as the McCourry have been in business for over 200 years. Today, no Arab man can imagine life without these little pleasures. Things are slightly less relaxed and orderly at the camel market just outside of Cairo. This is the Souk al-Gimal, the largest camel bazaar in the Middle East. An intense, noisy, and foul-smelling place, thousands of camels change hands here every Friday. Most of these exhausted and harshly treated creatures have walked for 40 days from central Sudan all the way to southern Egypt, only to be tightly packed on trucks and trains bound for Cairo. A lucky few of these camels will be sold for use on farms and in the tourist trade, but the majority will be slaughtered for their meat. The camels are first offloaded from trucks and hobbled with ropes to prevent their escape. Then the traders begin to sell skeptical buyers on the virtues of each animal. Here, the Arab art of bargaining, the integral business ritual of every bazaar, is put on display in an especially dramatic fashion. While a full-scale argument appears to break out, there is often less malice than meets the eye. These men are engaged in their well-defined roles, participants in an indispensable cultural exchange designed to secure mutual respect and a fair price. Like a game based on high ethical standards, with its own phrases and gestures, played out amongst knowledgeable traders, these vigorous exchanges of offers and counteroffers are really a simple matter of routine, normally concluded with a smile. Founded in 808 AD by a mighty ruler saint, Fez is the most spectacular of Morocco's royal cities. Situated in the northern half of the country, Fez is the religious and cultural center of Morocco. The Medina of Fez el Bali is one of the largest surviving medieval cities in the world. Over 600,000 people still live within the towering medieval walls that surround the old city. The walls are broken by over a dozen gates of great scale, such as the massive Bab Boujloud, the Blue Gate, which serves as one of the main entrances into Fez. All motorized vehicles are strictly taboo in the old Medina of Fez, with its labyrinth of 9,000 cobbled lanes and blind alleys, far better suited for the slow-moving donkey. Most of the supplies moving in and out of the bazaar are carried by hundreds of donkeys, which easily negotiate the Medina's narrow passageways. This is truly a medieval place, retaining much of its 1,000-year-old character.
The city was getting nearer, and at the same time it loomed up within my own mind, rising out of the darkness of memory, with all of its 1,000 faces pressing upon me questioningly. For Fez had once been familiar to me, well known, and yet full of inexhaustible secrets. In it, I had experienced another world and another age, a world of the Middle Ages, such as perhaps now no longer existed, an austere and yet enticing world, outwardly poor but inwardly rich. Titus Burkhardt, scholar.
The Great Bazaar of Fez is home to some of the most ancient trades still in practice. Fez is one of the oldest working centers of leather tanning and dyeing left anywhere. A visit to the tanner's quarter of the Fez Bazaar is literally a breathtaking experience, as the air hangs thick with the terrible stench of chemicals, sweat, and putrefaction. The process of making Moroccan leather begins with the cleaning of the raw cowhides, goat and sheep skins. Chemicals loosen the unwanted fur, which comes off the hides with ease. The leather is then softened with a greasy solution that gives it its characteristic shine. This is the first stage of the lengthy tanning process. Approximately 3,000 goat skins and 6,000 cowhides are transformed into high-quality dyed leather each day. All day long, these men stand knee-deep in noxious fluids without the benefit of protective clothing.
I arrive here early in the morning and work 10, sometimes 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Because I work all day in the vats, it is impossible to wash the smell and the dye from my skin. Nobody who works here can afford to get sick or hurt, because nobody has any extra money or insurance. Most of us began working here as young men, and we will work until we are no longer able. This was the same for my father and his father before him, and so it will be for my son.
More pleasing aromas greet the nose upon entering the food bazaar. Located in one of the oldest sections of the Medina, this market is frequently used by the local population. The food bazaar offers a tempting selection of butchered meats and freshly caught fish. This is one of the very last places where traditional bamboo roofs are still used to shade the bazaar from the scorching heat of the North African sun. Light trickles down in diffuse shafts, keeping things sufficiently cool and bright. Because they are a fire hazard, most of these lovely roofs of woven bamboo have been pulled down and replaced with unsightly sheets of corrugated tin. 30,000 master craftsmen earn a living in the 780 different trades that continue to be widely practiced in the old quarter of Fez. Knives and scissors are still sharpened to a razor's edge on foot-pedaled stones. Everyday household ceramics are still handmade by skilled craftsmen using foot-pedaled potter's wheels. Young artisans work hard to master the intricate designs that decorate the finest traditional Islamic ceramics. The famous green glaze roof tiles of Fez are still individually hand-molded from clay. These tiles will be left to bake for hours in the hot sun. They will eventually be used to cover a tomb, mosque, or madrasa, those theological colleges where students piously study the Quran. Fez has dozens of these madrasas, such as the Bu Inaniya, which clearly exemplifies the layout and refined beauty of these revered institutions. Traditional Muslim artists became masters at designing these spectacularly complex geometric patterns, mainly because artistic renditions of man and animal were strictly forbidden in the Quran. The ancient Medina of Fez is a treasure trove of sights and sounds that offer a look back into the past of the Great Bazaars. In the crooked, narrow streets of the old Medina, one can easily imagine a time when this city was a formidable commercial empire built upon the Moroccan landscape of North Africa. Located 400 miles south of Fez, the royal city of Marrakesh was, for centuries, the final destination for traders crossing the Sahara Desert. At the entrance of the Marrakesh Bazaar, on a 12-acre square known as the Jamal Ifna, the Arab and African cultures have mingled throughout the ages.
The farther end of the square shows only the low roofs of the city and the openings of one or two streets that plunge into a dark-covered labyrinth lined with 1,000 shops. From these mysterious streets that in the daytime conceal so many hushed mysteries, now pour forth streams of strange humanity. Swirls of dust rise from the feet of the asses and camels, and the crimson sunset light, diffused through the yellow haze hovering above the square, casts over the innumerable strange faces the glamour of Eastern romance that glimmers in old tales and in poets' dreams. C. E. Andrews, 1922.
Always a lively place, the Jamal Ifna once drew vast crowds to witness the rowdy spectacle of public executions. Today, the square is home to far less lethal delights. Daring and skilled, the acrobats have the most universal appeal. With studied calm, these men and boys perform dangerous maneuvers on the hard and punishing asphalt. In Marrakesh, talented performers pray for more than a few handfuls of coins from the tourists. Because European circuses are known to send scouts, the acrobats of Marrakesh always give it their all, regardless of the risks. Snake charmers enjoy a considerably safer occupation. Their cool composure in the face of the deadly cobra seems less impressive when one considers that most of the snakes are defanged. The traditionally clothed gerab, or water seller, is always on hand for a photo opportunity. These men no longer quench the thirst of the crowd, making their money instead by posing for the tourist cameras. And the Gnawa musicians now neglect the songs of their African forefathers, preferring to simply swirl the tassels of their caps, tinkle their handbells, and open their hands for bakshish. But powerful traditions have a strong way of holding on here. An African medicine doctor still uses the wisdom of his ancestors to dispense potent herbal remedies and cures. A few feet away, mysteriously veiled fortune tellers predict the future with eerie conviction. Henna is used to tattoo intricate designs across the female body. A syringe applies the henna, temporarily dyeing the surface of the skin a golden brown. Twilight is the best time to see the Jamal Ifna, as the worst of the day's heat has died down, and the fire breathers light up the darkening sky with spectacular bursts of flame. The Moroccans are famous for their love of food, a fact reflected by the great army of street vendors that pack the Jamal Ifna after dark. Popular here are the tasty charbroiled kebabs of marinated liver or lamb, along with such staples as almonds, apricots, and dates. This is one of the few places in the world where you can find such an extraordinary assortment of humanity, engaged in such a dizzying array of ancient and exotic professions. The Bazaar of Marrakesh has managed to keep much of its medieval character through the intervening centuries. It remains a vibrant marketplace, linking modern Morocco to its ancient past. Today, the future of the Great Bazaars is uncertain. During the golden age of the bazaars, the financial strength of the merchants and craftsmen enabled these institutions to survive in the midst of wars, famines, and political turmoil. It remains to be seen whether these meccas of commerce can hang on to their traditional role as marketplaces for the local people. The great bazaars are now faced with global competition that threatens to take away local customers and relegate these great commercial centers into nothing more than tourist attractions. Traditional local crafts are now struggling against the onslaught of mass-produced commercial goods and modern shopping malls, which now attract the new, younger generation of shoppers. But by far the greatest danger is the explosive growth in population in the urban areas of North Africa and the Middle East. The cities continue to swell with rural immigrants looking for work. In most cases, the older quarters of the cities, where accommodation is cheaper, have experienced the worst overcrowding and urban blight. Even the bazaar's ancient buildings are under threat as car exhaust and leaking sewers destroy their exteriors and undermine their very foundations. As a result, the old established elites and their businesses are fleeing to modern quarters, taking jobs and their purchasing power with them, and leaving the bazaars further impoverished. But despite all of these serious threats, there are some indications that the great bazaars will survive. One of the most encouraging signs can be found in Fez, where many of the ancient handicrafts have regained popularity with buyers, creating employment for more than half of the city's population working in the various traditional trades. Above all else, the bazaar will survive because of the attitudes of the people who continue to live and work within its traditional spaces. The bazaar remains a stronghold of the old Muslim culture, containing a people who possess the strongest of desires to live out their lives on their own non-Western terms. Here, the Islamic world has created an environment that both enchants and serves as a meeting place for all of humanity. In 1924, Leopold Weiss, an esteemed Austrian journalist and Islamic scholar, observed,
It seemed to me that for the first time I had come across a community in which people's relationships were based not on chance similarities of race and economic interests, but on deeper and more lasting foundations. A common view of the world and an attitude to life which removed any barriers of isolation.